I wouldn't be here working for the US consulate if I hadn't had that opportunity that Fulbright gave me.
It was a great year. Fun year that I enjoyed academically, that I enjoyed personally.
It changed my life, both professionally, also privately. I met my wife in the United States.
It helped me get to know what I want to do in the future.
I remember feeling like the like the luckiest person in the world to be in such company.
I think this year in Madison, Wisconsin occupies much larger space in my memories than any year before and after.
I have explained Germany and Germans to a lot of Americans, and now that I'm back, I'm explaining a lot of American habits and perceptions to Germans.
It was a great opportunity for me.
Fulbright showed me the way.
Hello, my name is David Patrician, proud Fulbright alumnus from the class of 2006. And today I'll be your host. The Fulbright program was established to build a mutual understanding between the people of the United States and other countries through the exchange of persons, knowledge, and skills. To extend the benefits of the Fulbright experience beyond the period of their actual academic exchange, former Fulbright scholars founded the German Fulbright Alumni Association in 1986. The association is active in organizing national events and also in regional chapters throughout Germany. They provide a tangible local presence and a rich choice of social and cultural activities. Here, members of all ages, educational and professional backgrounds come together for academic exchanges and professional networking. We traveled around Germany to meet some of our Fulbright alumni and talk about the benefit of their Fulbright experience.
Actually, the funniest reaction was just in the first days when I arrived at Pratt. And I went to the International Student Office and they said, oh yeah, here's this Fulbright grant, yeah, here's the Fulbright. And I'm like, yeah, my name is Daniela. Ah, here's the Fulbright. And her name is Daniela. So I think it was so funny, and it's the first time that I realized that this program is really big and strong.
Some of my old friends, which I met again, and my family, they didn't realize that I was a participant of a very renowned and very important program. So my mother said, for instance, oh, well, now you're back from your holidays. She thought it's a kind of vacation, and that was my culture shock reverse, telling my mates and my family that something very important happened to me.
I think my Fulbright year turned out to be the beginning of my entire professional career and was the peak time of my academic life.
I think it's very safe to say that I would not be standing here with ARD Aktuell if I hadn't had my Fulbright experience.
My professional life was guided by a lot of things I learned in my first year in America.
If you go to class there, if you go to the university, if you pass tests, if you write papers, that does something with you. Your self-esteem, your ambition, your personality changes.
I came back later after the Nobel Prize to receive an honorary degree from the university, which was a nice opportunity to meet some of my friends at that time.
Having been to the States was one of my credentials that helped me a lot to get into the international organization that I'm working for now.
Then the first job I took up after completing my PhD was as the coordinator of a transatlantic innovation research program. So, and again, I could benefit from what I learned during my Fulbright years.
Fulbright pretty much made me aware of my interests in that direction. It made me do the PhD in intercultural studies, and it made me want to go to the international domain. And so it did change my life in a professional sense.
When you do mention the name Fulbright, it becomes a key word in opening up opportunities to be invited to special occasions, to become a speaker.
There are numerous programs, of course, but there's only one Fulbright program.
the Fulbright program's major goals is to promote mutual understanding. Let's take a look at what our Fulbrighters took away from their intercultural exchange. Can you tell me maybe one thing, a very special occasion that you had during your year in Pennsylvania?
So it was a really different and a very pleasant experience for me to experience the campus culture in the United States, with the cultural activities, with the programs for international students, and also with the access to professors that I enjoyed. And that was really a great experience for me.
The American universities make you an alumnus for the rest of your life. And they know what to do and how to do it. And they create, while you are on campus, a spirit of you belonging to your alma mater. In Germany, once you are gone and have received your final exam papers, you are gone and there's no relationship to the institution any longer.
I found that American universities are much more accommodating if you want to venture into other disciplines.
Without the Fulbright program, I clearly would not have been for a couple of years in the Midwest of the United States, where I barely knew what to expect over there. In retrospect, it was heaven's blessing, because to the East Coast or to the West Coast you can go anytime, but learning to live the middle of the United States in what I would call real America remained truly impressive, of learning or getting to know Americans in their heartland.
Definitely, you know, the cliches became fully true just right when we stepped on the airplane to Austin. There were a couple of guys in business suits and cowboy hats. And you would think, you know, they came straight from a movie set, but they were real.
Well, I lived in Los Angeles for the most part of my scholarship or my exchange years, and LA is certainly not the normal image or the normal population of the United States, and they strongly emphasize that too. So even if I would be asked for stereotypes or statements on the American population, I do not think I would even be qualified, because living in New York or Los Angeles is most certainly not a representation of the American people.
I was sent on assignment to cover a story in a Mennonite village, and it was very fascinating to meet those people, to talk and discuss with them about their simple lifestyle and about the cultural differences, not only between Germany, they had German roots and German vocabulary, not only between Germany and America, but also within the States. I never forget how they reacted when they heard that I was apart from my family and that I won't see them in another year. That was beyond their world, actually. They couldn't imagine.
I'm living in Germany as a person with Turkish background. Most people accept me as a German with Turkish background. But when you live in the United States as a German student, they only see the German part. I was not Mehmet, Ahmed or Cem anymore. I was Hans or Johann or Peter. And this was a really interesting experience. Kind of felt naked because I lost my Turkish background for a moment.
They really appreciate having a German designer or design student in their class, because they love the Bauhaus design. It was always the technique, the big designers, the big ideas, which I felt which came from the US. And when I was there at the classroom, they said, no, you know, we're inspired especially by the German Bauhaus design and the idea. So it was really nice for them back, which I experienced.
Well, Americans are very friendly, and I experienced them as very generous with their time and with their knowledge and with their can-do attitude.
Americans have a reputation for being very open and, on the negative side, a little superficial in their social interactions. I've defended this one enormously in terms of why wouldn't you put a smile on your face?
I lived in a city where I lived in an Armenian neighborhood. The next neighborhood was Mexican, and the other one up north was mainly Korean. So I was different amongst Armenians. When I went shopping, I was a foreigner amongst Koreans, and all of us were Americans at that moment because we were part-time Americans, for a moment at least.
We owe Americans a lot, especially during the time after World War II. They taught us how to deal with democracy. And I think it's very important to tell people here in my society and in my environment that democracy is not an automatic thing. You have to participate.
And so when I moved to Sweden, I was very naive about American politics, to be quite honest. Spent my first 4 months defending the United States in every way I could possibly consider, mostly in the fields of volunteerism as a cultural norm, as well as supportive research and things like this. The last 8 months of my year in Sweden, however, I took more of the Swedish, more of the European perspective, and was far more critical of the United States, and realizing in the process the power I had as an American citizen, and how much of an influence Americans are capable of realizing by using our voting power.
I actually learned a lot about myself. I never felt more German than in the States, of course, because you constantly contrast yourself, your own culture, with the culture you encounter abroad. I must say that over the 3 years that I spent there, I have more of a somber, more neutral look, because many things I realized were not as great, and maybe things didn't go the way I thought might be working, between ethnicities, between religions, the poor, and how they are looked after. And so in a way it was a bit of a disillusionment. At the same time, I'm very happy that I had this, because it gave me a much more realistic image and picture of the United States, which in the end makes me appreciate both.
I gained personal friendships during this time, this academic year, and also that year where I worked in the US. And these personal friendships have lasted through these 25 years since.
Those friends were always generous hosts and inviting me all the time over, and I felt like I want to give something back. So what I did last year when I had my Fulbright anniversary, I was renting a house on the beach in Florida and telling them I'm the host now, and everybody who wants can come, and rumors spread around very fast, and we've been there, my husband and I, for 4 weeks, and Thursday, Friday, the first were arriving, and we had one weekend we had up to 15 people, and it was a wonderful reunion. It was a big party, and we had the time of our life, and I'm so glad I did that.
I had decided at the beginning of my year that I wasn't going to go home for Christmas, and because I wanted to, at the time I thought I would be here for just 1 year, and I really wanted to make that a complete experience and not break it by going home and seeing my family. And I was invited to go celebrate Christmas on the 25th with a colleague at the school, one of the teachers, and I felt so touched to be welcomed into their home and to eat with them and share how they celebrate with them.
It was very nice to see not only the city that I had to work in, but also just the nature and other cities of the United States, and it made me fall in love with the States over and over again.
I miss so many things about the US that I still sometimes just go to American Diner here to have the feeling back.
In the aftermath of World War II, Senator William Fulbright had the vision for a new academic exchange program. He proposed to send young scholars abroad, aiming to promote peace through mutual understanding. In his words, having people who understand your thought is much greater security than another submarine. Fulbright won support for his plan against strong opposition, and in 1946, President Truman signed what became known as the Fulbright Act. The German-American Fulbright program was established in 1952. 1 year later, some 200 American students, teachers, and researchers arrived in Germany, while a comparable group of German participants traveled to the United States.
When we landed in Hoboken, New Jersey, with the SS Sieberjagd coming from Rotterdam, compared to Bremerhaven or where I came from, it was all big, large and wide. To go at that time just 8 years after the war to a country of my dream, to be able to study really in freedom and to learn about the individual liberty which was a promise of America.
You could now and then hear German words in the TV, and these were only war movies where German military persons appeared, and whereas all other language was in English, no matter what nationality was speaking, Germans were speaking in German. And
I left Germany when Helmut Schmidt was chancellor, and I came back with a new chancellor named Helmut Kohl, and I was asked, who is that Mr. Kohl, when I was a student in Arizona.
That time when I was starting in the fall of 1983, there was something happening in Europe which was called the hot autumn, the hot fall, because people were demonstrating in masses and droves on the streets against the stationing of cruise missiles and Pershings, American missiles against the Soviet Union and all that. And they were mid-range missiles with neutron bombs on them. So here I was sitting in Massachusetts reading mails from somebody, a physicist who was actually philosophizing about what really happens when a neutron bomb explodes, and is it better to drop it to make it explode at 800 or 1200 meters of altitude. And I thought, this is great what you're discussing about there. Are you actually aware that you're talking about my home country there that will be simply wiped off the landscape? So I thought this is quite two different ways of looking at it.
I grew up in West Berlin, and the city was still surrounded by a wall, divided by a wall in between. And for me, having grown up here, that was very normal. That was the way of life. And so I went over to the United States, and I had people out there asking me, when I was giving speeches or talked about my hometown, they said, isn't that somewhat weird, living in a city like that, under circumstances like that, surrounded by, communist Soviet soldiers by the thousands? And I said, that is strange. Now that you say it, I really became, aware of that special situation, and I learned much more about my background.
I like to refer to my time as a Fulbrighter in the States as the golden years before 9/11. It was quite not an innocent age, but everything, life was good for a lot of Americans, and the only thing everyone seemed to worry about was the relations President Clinton had in the Oval Office with some interns. So I think that says a lot about that time. It was a bit more carefree, maybe.
I arrived in the United States on August 15, 2001, only 3 weeks before the attacks of September 11th. So when those attacks happened, I was right there, living close to campus, and when I heard about the news on television, I went over to campus and was very impressed with all the students congregating there, coming together and trying to share their thoughts and their grief, and basically we spent all day there, and I was very impressed with this reaction because it was completely free of aggression at that time. And we all were under the impression that that might change later. We were all afraid of it might change, and we all knew it did. But at that time it was only a feeling of grief and of, kind of despair and of belonging together, of being like one big community. And that was a very impressive situation. It's a very impressive memory that kind of told me something about how Americans feel that they belong together.
During my stay there, it was the anniversary of the Berlin airlift, and the Goethe Institute invited me to be the voice of young Berlin on the podium next to the pilots of the airlift machines. And it was a little awkward moment when I was asked how my generation and the younger generation perceives or thinks about the airlift, and I had to admit that my assumption is that most of them don't even really know the full story anymore, because history is going fast and people tend to forget a lot, and kids nowadays have other worries than the Berlin airlift. And the first 2 seconds the people were a little stunned by that answer, a little shocked, and then one of the pilots replied that he's actually quite happy that people don't have to remember this anymore.
While it's important to remember the past, what does America think about the current and future role of exchange programs? Let's ask the U.S. Ambassador to Germany, the Honorable Philip Murphy. We're standing here in Pariser Platz, right next to the Brandenburg Gate, and this is where the Berlin Wall stood for many, many years. The wall has been gone now for over 20 years and the Cold War is over. What makes exchange programs like the Fulbright program still relevant in this day and age?
They're more important, interestingly enough. And the reason is, before the wall fell, the very bad news was we had a wall separating Berlin, Germany, and Europe. That was the overwhelming challenge and bad news. The silver lining, or the paradox, if you will, was that we were drenched in each other's cultures. We had dozens of America houses, hundreds of thousands of troops here, reading rooms. We were living with each other, growing up with each other, particularly in Germany. And the walls come down, Gott sei Dank, without a shot being fired. That's the overwhelming, one of the great developments in modern history. But the fact is we have no more America houses. We have no more Berlin Brigade, to pick on this great city. There are so many examples where we've now focused together, I might add, as close a relationship with Germany as perhaps we've ever had, but focused on challenges elsewhere. So I think the exchange programs, and the Fulbright program in particular, are even more important today than they were before the wall fell.
Time to get back on the road. This time we find ourselves in romantic Bavaria. If you had the chance to talk to policymakers in either Germany or in the United States and tell them why it's important to continue supporting the Fulbright program, what would you tell them?
It is important, in my opinion, that you train people not to get into conflicts, or the other way around, train people how to get out of conflicts and help people to find solutions when they are in a different opinion about certain things.
I know from personal experience, when people attack or say something negative about America, I would always say, have you been there? Do you know people there? And do you count them into that group of making that negative statement? And if you support a program that sends people over who are highly qualified, have a very promising future, are very drawn into social interaction, they can always be ambassadors.
From my American mother-in-law, I learned the phrase to be penny wise but pound foolish. And I think cutting and ending the support for programs like the Fulbright program might be saving pennies now, but we'd be paying a lot later on, because the invaluable service that these programs provide in so many aspects are invaluable. They can't be paid for.
I simply say, after working 20 years in a bank, I know something about cost benefit, I know something about return on investment. And there is hardly a better investment I can imagine than investing in young people, sending them over, because that will have a payoff that is sometimes hard to measure, but sometimes very easy to measure, very quantifiable payback, because it's pretty clear that a lot of people who had their Fulbright scholarship afterwards became, first of all, more productive than they would have been without it, because they suddenly realized that they had better potential than they thought. And number two, they make more connections, which is very good for international trade.
And the best thing is now having Skype and having internet, staying in contact with all these people. But to make these contacts, you have to go there.
Yeah, you can turn a computer off, but you can't turn an idea off, you can't turn an experience off.
If I hadn't lived with an American roommate during the time of my studies there, I think I couldn't not have built that sort of personal relationship. I went to his grandparents on Thanksgiving, and we shared the turkey there. And these experiences I think you can't relate over social media. You just have to have been there.
When we founded the Alumni Association, German-American relationship was always perfectly beautiful. We all loved each other. All Germans admire America and all that. And then suddenly came the second Iraq War and George W. Bush. And needless to say what happened then, because everybody knows it. So suddenly we, as Fulbrighters, were the only ones who were respected by both sides. Because if you talked as a normal German to Americans, they would say, well, you Germans, you don't know us. And vice versa. So we were suddenly really the cultural ambassadors between the two sides. And that's where Fulbrighters really begin to thrive.
The German Fulbright Alumni Association has over 1,000 members and continues to grow every year. It is a great opportunity to make new friends as well as help building a professional network. One of the highlights of the alumni program is the annual Winter Ball, held in a different city every year. During the membership meeting, a new board of directors is elected, and a variety of topics are discussed, such as upcoming activities. In 2012, the Winter Ball was in Schwerin. In addition to the membership meeting, the weekend was packed with a city tour and a variety of social events. Fulbrighters are known for being curious, so it's only natural that we enjoy exploring our host city and learning about the history and traditions of the region. As the sun slowly sets, the highlight of the weekend finally comes. An evening filled with music, dancing, and conversation that lasts well into the early morning. Fulbrighters also take their entertainment seriously. For someone who just came back from their Fulbright year, is it important for them also to get involved in the Alumni Association? What can they expect?
It's fun. It's always a little trip in the past, and it's also about building up the future.
When I came back from, I remember standing in Frankfurt Airport in June 1998, and saying, "No, that is, I can't walk into this old life again. Let me go back."
Once you come back, the real Fulbright experience lasts much longer. And then build on that foundation and the experiences you have this whole big group that shares the same experiences with you, that has the same commitment to the German-American partnership and friendship, that wants to help Germans understand America better, help Americans understand Germans better. And there's no better place for a Fulbrighter to do this within the Fulbright Alumni Network.
An alumni association is an instant network of change makers.
And we're part of this family. There's like this unspoken bond between people who've done this.
To some extent, it's a feeling of belonging to a group who had the luxury, the pleasure, and the fun of having been in the States for a year or longer.
You know, at the time when we founded it, we were students, and we simply thought, well, we don't have any connections. You know, we knew that the American Alumni Association had people on the board that were the president of Coca-Cola or things like that. So of course we said we can never beat that, but let's say we can first make up for that with enthusiasm and simply try to get some things rolling. And but now we are, some of us, in pretty good positions somewhere and have connections and all that. And it's, after all, it's about networking. Let's make no mistake about it. And as one of the Fulbrighters likes to say, it's networking or not working.
The networking capability, the meeting. We are now saying networking, but we in those days didn't use the word networking because it wasn't established yet. We just said, let's make the contact, go for it. And Fulbrighters do that.
It's a great community to meet people who are very open-minded, to have great conversations, to make friends, and to feel part of something bigger than just yourself.
You can nearly talk with everyone about everything.
I think I have not yet met an uninteresting Fulbright alumni. I mean, you go in any country and you will always find Fulbrighters, and they always connect to you.
When I came back, there was another personal aspect, which is Stefan. I met at the Fulbright alumni meetings, and yeah, so as you could see, we are now a family and have 2 little kids.
The things that the association offers to you, the skills that you can learn from joining a project, is something you might be able to use in your career later as well. It's true for me for several projects that I joined for the association. So it's easier to start playing with your skills or not discovered skills within these volunteer projects than later in your professional career.
I learned something about managing people, which it's difficult to learn in your studies, because after all, studies are very theoretical. No, that was my case study on managing people, and it's actually even harder to manage people when you don't pay them salaries.
Yeah, when I came back to Germany from the US, I immediately joined the association. I just wanted to renew that experience. I wanted to keep it going, and I became vice president members, and after 2 years I became president, and I'm now president of the German Fulbright Alumni Association, and that as well changed everything for me. It's thrilling and fascinating.
It's more than just having a Stammtisch and having beer together and talking about old times. I think what is much more important is to actually engage yourself into dialogue, to engage yourself into little joint projects that the Alumni Association does. A lot of these projects they do with us, with the Fulbright Commission, which I think is fantastic. It's something that is not happening in other countries, and I'm very proud that the German Alumni Association does it the way it does it. Maybe it's because they're independent from us. It's for that reason, I think, to actually be able to engage, to give back, and to do something creative together with other Fulbrighters, that I would recommend young returnees to join the Fulbright Alumni Association.
It's a great opportunity to try yourself in real life, not academic life, but real life, to take responsibility, to try out leadership positions, to really have an impact in real life by organizing events, by publishing the Fulbright magazine.
Basically, you get into a new family.
When you are a Fulbrighter, you're part of that family. It's immediately understood, that my home is your home.
It's something you'll be all your life long. It's something nobody can ever take away from you. It's something you're going to appreciate and cherish all life long. And why not be part of the gang? Again, it's fun.
It's always a very stimulating crowd of people and great interactions, and people come from all different backgrounds and from all different disciplines.
Apart from everything else, the Alumni Association is an excellent professional network. It has helped me more than once to develop my career.
And I think being part of the Alumni Association is a nice way to be able to give something back to the program.
And one way of giving back is through the Fulbright Diversity Program, established in 2006.
We developed a program 5 years ago which we could not finance through regular channels because the guidelines wouldn't allow that. A short-term program, a summer program where we send young Germans from underprivileged backgrounds into summer schools in the United States. This is a program where the Alumni Association has joined us in supporting it, not only in kind, by selecting them, but also in cash, a substantial amount of cash. So the contribution that alumni give to their own association goes back into new programs, new initiatives that provides opportunities to go abroad. I find this a superb example of cooperation, and I'm happy that we can do that together with the Alumni Association.
The Fulbright Alumni Organization has so much to offer that the question really is, why would you not join it?
It's a club that any of us would die to be a part of. The extraordinary talent, the extraordinary commonality and shared experiences. It's the ultimate 1 + 1 = 3 result. You join that alumni group and you're just, again, drenched with talent and common experiences, and yet at the same time an incredible diversity.
Having the initiative to apply for a Fulbright grant as opposed to any other international exchange program, you're already committing to devoting your activities towards social change. And so joining an alumni association is more or less reaffirming that commitment, reaffirming that desire to do more with your life than than your own little niche, right? To apply yourself for a better society.
60 years ago, I was a Fulbrighter, young Fulbrighter, active, full of curiosity. I'm 80, I'm still full of curiosity, and I enjoy being with the young Fulbrighters because I see myself in them. And so you are always a Fulbrighter all your life until you die.